Hey friends, Dr. Nixon here. Welcome to the Holistic Hormone System Q&A. We had so many questions that came in, some on Instagram, some in the office on paper, question after question on how do I balance my hormones. So we're going to dive into estrogen, progesterone, weight gain, weight loss, menopause, perimenopause. If we have a few extra minutes, we'll dive into male hormones as well. Most of the beginning, we're going to talk about female hormones. And I want you guys to know men and women obviously both have hormones. Women's tend to fluctuate a lot more. And men have their own issues with hormones. And it's also just detrimental if they don't balance their hormones. So I do want to cover as much as I can. I have a lot of content to jump into. My name is Dr. Nixon. My wife and I own Twin City Health. It is a holistic chiropractic office in North Carolina. And I do functional medicine across the country, mostly in the Southeast. And I cover things like Holistic Hormone System, a full gut overhaul, and methylation, which is all about MTHFR. Today, we are going to focus in on hormones and dive right into the questions. And so I'm excited to walk through this with you guys. If you have questions, you can throw them in the comment box. Instagram, you can follow us. Grateful you guys are here tuning in. So I want to walk through this first. What are the signs of unbalanced progesterone and estrogen? Which is such a great question. And there's many signs, and there's a lot of overlap. And so I think the easiest way to walk through the basics in understanding estrogen and progesterone is to do the seesaw analogy. Okay. So y'all remember seesaws when we were a kid at the playground playing, and you had, Billy Bob on one side and Sally Joe on the other. And, we did like this, right? Okay. So estrogen and progesterone sit on a seesaw. When estrogen goes up, progesterone does what? Goes down. Pretty simple. Okay. So in a normal cycle, young girl develops, hits puberty, estrogen's coming up, and in the cycle, ovulation happens, and then conception doesn't happen, and then we create what's called a period where the body is going to slough off excess estrogen that it did not use for conception. So estrogen is high, progesterone is here, and then comes up, progesterone peak, ovulation, doesn't get utilized, the body's going to drop down estrogen, and there's a normal cycle. So a cycle is a normal process that happens in the body. The first problem that we typically see, and I'd say the most common issue that we tend to see when we run hormone testing, either blood or saliva or really good urine testing nowadays, what we typically will find when someone's having symptoms is excess estrogen and low progesterone. So let's start there. Excess estrogen. What is estrogen? It is a growth hormone. So it makes things grow, including fat cells. So one of the most common side effects of excess estrogen is weight gain. Weight goes up. And so then here's the kicker, and this is where it gets really frustrating for people. When estrogen goes up, fat cells go up. Estrogen is stored in fat cells. Fat cells release and make more estrogen. And so it's literally this vicious cycle of excess estrogen, fat cells, more estrogen, fat cells, and then it just keeps going while progesterone goes low. So here comes irregular cycles, missed periods, extremely painful or heavy cycles or heavy periods. And when progesterone goes low, progesterone is the happy hormone. Yay, joy, oxytocin, progesterone. So when progesterone goes low, guess what we get? Bad mood swings, low energy, depression, even anxiety. That's a really big sign that we find with lower levels of progesterone. And oftentimes in a, let's just call it a 30-ish day window, if this young lady's or this female's progesterone comes up, she'll have a few days where she feels good, but then patients will say to me, for the most part, the majority of the month, I don't feel good. Oftentimes we'll find high estrogen, low progesterone. So those are just some of the signs. Then it just keeps getting worse, if things just continue to progress and the person isn't addressing the root cause, or if their doctor tells them, hey, it's just kind of normal. You're a woman. This is how your hormones work. Or if they run some labs but not the right ones, and they say, hey, everything looks fine. It's just kind of all in your head. Or if you talk about anxiety, they're like, oh, hey, here's just a medicine, an anti-anxiety medication. Just take this and hear me out. Listen, I'm not anti-medicine. Medicine has a time and a place, and the modern emergency medical care in the United States is amazing. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is I want to fix root causes. And the first thing I have to do is understand what the problem actually is. So if you've been told those things, I just want you to know there's hope. You can get answers for your hormones, and you certainly can balance them. But anxiety is a really strong sign of higher estrogen, low progesterone as well. So then if it gets worse, then estrogen will start getting converted to things like testosterone. And if you're a woman, then you'll start to have abnormal hair growth. So this is where hair can start growing on the face, acne along the jawline, the cystic acne starts showing up. Oftentimes, this is excess estrogen converting to testosterone, which is, again, something that you don't want. So those are some of the main signs of unbalanced progesterone and estrogen in the body. And I want to walk you guys through how we help. Like, what are some of the first things we can start doing to change that, to really help that? And I want you guys to know this. You're like, why is a guy talking about hormones like this? I definitely didn't start out in the hormone space at all. That was not my intention. But I saw countless countless women, patients who had gone to their OBs and just didn't get answers. And they were told it's all in your head. And it was super frustrating. And they would try stuff, and whether it was diets or intermittent fasting, and especially if they started like working out like high intensity, it would just make their hormones worse. And so it was just really frustrating. And then eventually what had happened was my wife and we had our first son, Lincoln. And we were maybe, I guess, 7-ish, 8-ish years into practice. And we wanted to grow our family. We wanted to have another baby. And we were running into walls. We couldn't conceive. We were trying, and we weren't able to get pregnant. And unfortunately, we went through a miscarriage, and it was just heartbreaking. And I remember so many of the conversations that I had with my patients who had been in those shoes, and their OB really told them, hey, there's not much we can do. We can look at things like birth control, but if you're trying to get pregnant, like, that's not really going to help. So we don't really have answers for you. And they were very rarely, if ever, willing to run tests. And so that set me on a journey. I want to figure it out. I want to learn hormones. And so I learned male and female hormones, functional medicine, the whole 9 yards, really just trying to understand what was going on. And so my wife and I both got our hormones tested, and estrogen and progesterone and mine and cortisol. And I spent years and years and years researching this stuff to figure it out. And we did some really simple hormone protocols. Well, it felt simple, to me, but we did some really simple hormonal changes for both of us. And we were able to conceive, and we have sweet little Lily Ember. This is a picture. We were in the Grand Tetons with the grandparents. It was a bucket list trip for grandma. Really, really sweet. And so she's almost 4 now. Lincoln is almost 8, which is wild. And I love being a dad. But really what it comes down to, what I learned in functional medicine, especially with hormones, is it's all about data. Better data will give you better decision-making skills to change your hormones, right? And that's one of the other questions. So this was really, really good. Okay, so the next question that came in was all about pregnenolone and menopause and post-menopause. And we had other questions that came in about, like, hey, how do I know what my hormones are doing? Let me go back to this one. How do I know what my hormones are doing? How do I know if I have excess estrogen? How do I know if I have low progesterone? Okay. I want to walk you guys through this because I think this is very, very important. There are multiple ways to do this. I'm not the only functional medicine doctor in the world that does this. But if you're going to get your hormones tested, remember this: the right test on the right day. Right test, right day. Is there a wrong test? I would say the research would show that blood tests for estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and cortisol are not the best. Blood tests are not the best, especially for cortisol, which is your stress hormone, which is oftentimes the driver of your estrogen and progesterone. The reason why is this: if I'm driving my vehicle to go get my cortisol blood draw, and a deer leaps out in front of me, and I slam on my brakes and I swerve, and I'm freaked out. My heart rate's up, my cortisol's through the roof, fight or flight mode, adrenaline, and then I go and give them my blood, my cortisol will be off. That's one reason. The other reason is cortisol is more of a bell curve. Comes up, you wake up, cortisol comes up, comes across, lunchtime, afternoon time, evening time. Now we're coming down, and it should land right around bedtime and should stay low. Cortisol changes throughout the day. And so blood tests it's tough to get that many blood draws in a day. And it's tough to get accurate numbers on blood. So I prefer, and we'll typically only use either saliva or urine. Urine is dried urine. It's called a Dutch test. Saliva gives you free hormones. I love using saliva for most patients, especially for seeing cortisol. You spit in a tube several times a day is how you get it. And you'll even do it first thing in the morning. It'll tell you what your cortisol was doing at night while you were sleeping. Why is this important? If you're that person that wakes up in the middle of the night just to go to the bathroom, and in that 30 seconds of urinating, your mind starts going. Things to do, the grocery list. I got to take so-and-so to school. What about my finances? Whatever your brain starts doing, and you can't capture those thoughts, and now you're awake for the next hour, 2 hours. If it's 4 a.m., you just get up. That is most likely a cortisol spike in the middle of the night, and you can actually capture that and test that on saliva testing. Better data gives you better decision-making skills. So I like to run saliva. When you ask me questions like, hey, is pregnenolone good? I'm postmenopausal. I'm like, yeah, potentially. Remember this, in holistic health, there's a million things you could do. Okay. What I really want to know is if I'm going to spend my money and my time and my energy on something for my health, I want to know if it's going to work. How do I know if it's going to work? Well, you can just get tested. So if you're postmenopausal, you can still get tested for hormones. So there's 3 types of estrogen. How many? 3 types of estrogen. You can see where you're at postmenopausally. Postmenopausal women who have excess estrogen are at more risk for things like breast cancers. And so you don't want excess estrogen. And you can look at pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is your master hormone. And it'll tell you, do you have enough pregnenolone to make things like testosterone? Because you still want testosterone. You still want progesterone to be made. You don't want excess estrogen when you're postmenopausal. So pregnenolone can be helpful for sure, especially if you need it. All right, let's go to this one. What's the best way to reset your hormones? Let me try and give you guys some practical stuff, some nitty gritty. And again, this will apply to a lot of people. I have a full holistic hormone webinar on YouTube. You can watch the whole training, but I want to walk you guys through the cycle of stress. Okay, so check this out here. Let me make it big for you. All right. So one of the first things that happens in our lives, all of our lives, the body experiences stress. Have you ever experienced stress? You know what this looks like. You go into fight or flight mode. This could be a situation with family, a family member, a boss, something scary happened, an issue with a loved one or a family member, right? So you experience stress. Your body creates cortisol to adapt to that stress. Cortisol is not always bad. It's your fight or flight mode. It goes into a protective mode. Okay. When that happens, when cortisol goes up chronically, estrogen will go with it. And when estrogen goes up, remember I said earlier, the seesaw, progesterone goes down. Okay. So the body experiences more stress. Then, if you're still in that stressor, your body will steal progesterone to make more cortisol, because cortisol is a survival mechanism. Your body will choose to stay alive. It will steal progesterone to make cortisol. So now you have high cortisol, high estrogen, and low progesterone, and you're still in a state of stress. All right. Well, so that right there is a really, really common mixture that we see. If you go to a traditional OB or a traditional medical doctor, not all of them, but gosh, the most of them, and you're like, hey, I'm feeling really stressed out. This is going to be a really hard season. I'm feeling stressed. I have anxiety. They're like, hey, and you're like, I think it's my hormones. They're like, yeah, sure, let's take a look. They run your progesterone. They're like, oh, yeah, your progesterone's low. Let's just add in progesterone, right? Great idea in theory, right? Hey, you have low progesterone, make it higher. But remember what I just said. What does cortisol do? Cortisol will steal your progesterone to make more cortisol. If it's like you have a fire and you're like, I'm going to put out this fire with a liquid. Good idea. But the liquid you chose was gasoline. Bad idea. So it just makes more of itself, creates more cortisol. And oftentimes, this is the person that will experience anxiety from taking progesterone. It happens, and your doctor will say, oh, that doesn't happen. Oh, it might just be in your head. Oh, you're a little crazy. Or you're a little sensitive. The answer is no. It biochemically makes sense. And if you're one of those people, you're going to want to find someone who can do a functional medicine doctor who can do saliva testing. And I'd love to help you. So here's some other signs of cortisol, high cortisol and low progesterone. Rapid weight gain, mainly in the face, chest, and abdomen. The abdomen's a big one. Skin changes, things like acne, mood swings, anxiety, depression, bloating. There's a thing called the estrobiome. Some people call it the estrobiome. I call it the estrobiome. It is the connection between your gut and your hormones. Your gut and your hormones. Your body, part of your gut, your liver, is responsible for detoxifying estrogen. And so when your body has excess estrogen, or if you're not detoxifying properly, it can really cause issues. Irregular cycle is another one, trouble sleeping, and headaches right there as well. Okay, so let me go back to this. So I hope that helps. So what's the best way to reset your hormones? I love this question. So let's just go with the typical person. High estrogen, where's my seesaw? High estrogen, low progesterone, high cortisol. First thing we have to do is figure out cortisol, do saliva testing, balance their stress hormone. Get this person sleeping. Sleep is so important. I need you to sleep. And so we're going to make sure that you're getting deep rest. We're going to change your morning time routine to help with that. You're going to have a cortisol spike and a cortisol dip, most likely. Some people are so lucky or so unlucky, they have two. We call that one a double mountain. So we're going to manage those. We're going to bring the cortisol down. As we're doing that, if someone has excess estrogen, we're going to detoxify it. How do you detox estrogen? Through your liver. So this is where we'll use things like milk thistle. Glutathione is a really, really good antioxidant that your body makes to help move your liver along and to help detox pathways of excess estrogen. Two specifics that we like to use: DIM, D-I-M. It is an estrogen detoxer, and calcium D-glucarate. Calcium D-glucarate. You can have new estrogens or old estrogens. Old estrogens are things that often get passed down from mom. They can be old estrogens that hung around from puberty. New estrogens would be things that you're being exposed to pretty consistently, more newly. So that would be cortisol if you're in a stress response acutely. Plastics, like secret deodorant, like xenoestrogen, so things that mimic estrogen. Metalloestrogens would be aluminum in deodorant. So you want to switch to a deodorant that does not have aluminum in it. Okay. There we go. So really simple things there, but you want to detox the estrogen. Again, there's 3 of them, so you want to know which one you're going after. With progesterone, if someone has low progesterone, more often than not, I'm not going to put them on progesterone because their cortisol is high. If their cortisol is normal or they've worked on it, we can consider adding progesterone in, and that can be a really, really good idea. Otherwise, I'll detox estrogen And what will happen to progesterone is it will naturally increase. I want you to be able to make your own hormones, because that's the way God created your body. He created your body to work and to heal, and you can actually make your own hormones. I'm not completely against people taking bioidentical hormones, but in my opinion, I would much rather you make your own than have to take something, period. Why? Because your body can't. All right, that leads me to this next question. I had, let's bring it across. Here we go. I had a hysterectomy 25 years ago. How am I still having menopause symptoms? Yeah, great question. Had a hysterectomy. Obviously, I don't know all the details of what they had taken out, full hysterectomy and ovaries and uterus and all the deal. But I think the easiest way to answer this, because you're most likely still having menopause symptoms, hot flashes, mood swings, night sweats, you're waking up and changing your clothes in the middle of the night because they're drenched, blasting the AC down really, really low. I want you guys to remember this. Again, menopause is a normal process. Perimenopause is a normal process. It's the way God created your body. It's the end of childbearing years. But the symptoms of menopause are not normal. Night sweats, mood swings, insomnia, just a change in personality. Oftentimes those are signs of hormonal imbalance. And so you can go through, because everyone's heard the stories. You can hear the stories of a woman who goes through menopause and feels amazing. She's like, I feel great. I have energy. Life is good. And then you have her best friend goes through menopause, is like, this is awful. I have all the symptoms. What's the difference? The difference is often hormones and how much estrogen you have going into menopause. Because again, menopause is what? It's a natural in the childbearing years, and you're reducing your estrogen very, very low. So if your estrogen's here and you're going through menopause and you reduce it, you're like, oh, okay, I don't feel so bad. But what if my estrogen's up here? Now I have a longer way to fall. The steeper the fall, the worse symptoms you're going to feel. So get your hormones tested. Again, saliva through a functional medicine doctor before you get to menopause, please, because it will help you. So if you're having symptoms, but you had a hysterectomy, most likely your estrogen is getting stored in your fat cells. That would be my best guess. Your estrogen is getting stored in your fat cells. It's hard to know which one it is, E1 or E2 or E3, unless you do saliva testing. But that would be my recommendation. Find someone who will do saliva testing on you. I'll send you guys, I'll post the link in here. You guys can find it. And I do free discovery calls with people all over the country. If you're a good fit and we want to work together, we'll work together. If you don't need me, I'll point you in the right direction. If you can get your testing done, some OBs will actually help you. I'll tell you what to ask for. I just want to help serve you however I can. So, but that would be the first step for sure, is get a full hormone panel. Okay. All right. Last question here. How do I combat weight gain in perimenopause? All right. This is good. Cortisol is usually the answer on this one. How do I combat weight gain in perimenopause? So perimenopause, it can happen. It can start in mid-30s, mid-40s, and you're getting closer to menopause. Peri means around. So around menopause is what we're talking about right here. So I think these are blue light blockers because this screen is so bright. All right. What was I talking about? Perimenopause, how to combat weight. The answer is usually cortisol. So cortisol is a stress hormone. So a person in perimenopause years, maybe they have kiddos. If they have kiddos, then they have like soccer or baseball or school or something, and they're also in their mid-40s. And so if their parents are still around, they're navigating parental relationships, grandparents. If their parents are healthy, that's great. If they're not healthy, that makes it harder. They're also in their working years often. So now they're like, hey, I want to retire one day, so I need to work really hard. They're also navigating adult friendships, which are just different than they were. And they're also learning things about themselves as a parent. They're like, I don't like that I yell at my kid all the time. I want to go to therapy and figure this out. And so there could be a lot of stress. I know all about those things. All those things I named is because I have experienced them. and my wife and my family. So, and it's wonderful. 'Tis the journey. And so when you're maybe experiencing cortisol, and you also, remember I said earlier, cortisol goes up, estrogen goes up. Estrogen is a growth hormone. It makes things grow. So you're putting on weight. Okay, hypothetical. And you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to do what? I'm going to exercise harder. I'm going to do hard workouts and hit workouts, and I'm going to crush it. Cool. So when you do those types of workouts, oftentimes they will elicit cortisol, stress hormones. If you're doing hardcore, like CrossFit-ish, hardcore hit workout stuff, oftentimes those can give your body more cortisol. And so if you increase cortisol, you're going to increase estrogen, and you're going to put on weight because you're working out harder. I know you're like, that doesn't make sense. But when you look at saliva hormones and you see this person working out and putting on weight, that is why. So what do we do with that person? So we give them options. Oftentimes their cortisol spikes at a certain time of the day. So I'll say, hey, first thing, if we can switch the type of exercise you're doing, that might be helpful. So we'll go from like hit workouts to strength training. You can still do CrossFit. We're just going to dial everything a bit down. Have you heard of yoga or Pure Barre or stretching or Pilates? Maybe we'll try and find something like that. Maybe something like swimming. Just trying to switch gears a little bit if the person can do that. If they're like, no, I love my workouts, I want to keep doing them. Cool. Based on your saliva cortisol test, I can tell you when to do them. So cool. Part of the protocols I put together, it's not just what to take, it's when to take it. Right? Not just what to take, it's when to take it. I can tell you exactly when during the day to take a vitamin or a supplement, or when during the day you could work out that would give you the most efficient results. That's what we're going after. So that is how you can. The other thing, I had a bunch of questions on this, and I know I'm running out of time, but I'm gonna give you guys a little bit. When cortisol goes up, insulin sensitivity changes. When cortisol goes up, insulin sensitivity changes, meaning your ability to control blood sugar is diminished. Meaning when you eat something that is sugar or converts to sugar, it'll more likely stay in your body a bit longer, or you'll have a really high insulin spike and a really low dip. So you'll eat and then you'll crash, you'll feel tired. And that also affects your insulin, which will affect your metabolism, which will make you gain weight. So the other thing that you can do while you're balancing cortisol is to also mitigate blood sugar spikes and dips. And so one of the ways I love to do this is by increasing some protein. Increasing protein is a really easy thing, and a lot of people are not consuming enough protein. So that's how I would combat weight gain during perimenopause. So cool. Oh man, we talked through a lot. I hope this was really, really helpful. Gosh, we covered estrogen and progesterone. Remember the seesaw. Remember what happens here. You can detoxify estrogen. You can get rid of excess estrogen. You can naturally make progesterone. That'll be helpful for your body, but the right test on the right day. Right test, right day. Better data gives you better decision-making skills. I love saliva testing. If you're looking for a functional medicine doctor who can run saliva testing on you, I'd love to hop on a free call with you. We'll chat, we'll connect, see where you're at, see what you've already done or tried, and see if we're a good fit. If we are, I'd love to coach you through what to do. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of women and men also balance their hormones, and I love the outcomes. Again, can I see that picture again? I love, not that one. I love my family. I love my kiddos, and it's been a joy to be able to help women, help patients, men and women get their health back. And there they are. I love those guys. I love being a dad. It's the best. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you guys for the questions. There's so many more I didn't get through. I will post more videos on our YouTube of how to holistically and naturally balance your hormones. Again, this was Dr. Nixon with Holistic Hormone System. Bless you guys. I'll see y'all next time. Have a beautiful day.